Hello, and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Sezin Palmer with EY, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Wendy Batchelder. She is the Senior Vice President and Chief Data Officer at Centene Corporation. So EY conducted a study this year and found that 70% of healthcare executives characterized the impact of AI adoption in their organization as incremental or experimental. And the choices were like, radical, risk conscious, or, incremental or experimental. So I guess my question is, there's a lot of excitement about the transformative or radical kinds of impact that AI can have in healthcare. I guess what activities do you see as being most relevant to addressing a lot of the concerns that we talked about in terms of AI adoption to enable a more transformative and positive impact from AI in healthcare?
No, I think, as I mentioned, the trust is the biggest impact and concern I have around AI. And I think that it's critical that we not only build trust into the tools, like trust by design, but that we ensure ethical use and the maintaining alignment with patient-centered values is at the center. I really do think that it was interesting in the study that 70% of healthcare executives viewed AI impact as incremental or experimental. That resonates with me and sounds pretty aligned to where we are, that I would say we're interested in AI and using it. And we have been using AI in other forms for many, many years, but that we are taking a cautious approach because we want it to be intentional and necessary. And that's just a critical part of our posture of how we're thinking about AI. Because I think at the core, once we lose trust amongst either our members or providers, be very difficult to rebuild. So we'll certainly recognize that the issues around the use of data and AI in the healthcare space do have a lot of mistrust, and that is real. So we can't, I think, underscore that enough, that we have to stay really alert about how we're thinking about this, and that as we're thinking about our governance and continuing to mature and evolve that we want to make sure that any AI that we're implementing is done with sufficient scrutiny, that we're assessing, any bias, errors, misuse, and that we're making sure that the complexity of our healthcare data and the decisions therein is high stakes, and we need to treat it as such. So, I want to make sure that we're thoughtful about, what is the right approach and how should we be thinking about this? And in my opinion, really focusing on enablement, optimization, like we talked about earlier, just improving access to care without replacing human judgment, but having, human in the loop, making sure that we're taking a really measured and experimental mindset that gives time and space for us to reflect upon what we're setting out to do. Is it working as intended? And that we're continuing to pressure test that so that our teams can learn, adapt, and scale really responsibly. And then for me, I also think that it's not just about speed to market. It's really making sure that we have the right tools to solve the right problems with the right efficiencies. And so when you break it down like that, our strategy and approach has to really alleviate those concerns. And so when you think about the framework and the governance and the participation of those across the organization, I do think that helps alleviate these concerns that healthcare executives are responding to your survey in such a way.
Yeah, well, I find the approach that you guys are taking and kind of the vision and the values, that's very inspiring to hear how you guys are approaching this. So anyway, just commentary there. So when you look across the trade space, of use cases, and as you said, you want to improve access to care, you want to improve efficiencies, and do all these things that are at the end of the day going to improve, patient member experience. What are some of the measures that you look for, or some of the key indicators around like ROI value that you're looking for to say, yes, we're making the right investments here from a data and AI perspective?
Yeah. It's a great question. And I think it's also fascinating that, at least in all of the data teams I have led across multiple industries, data teams are usually profoundly bad at measuring impact, even though they're very skilled at measuring impact for others. It's harder for data teams, I think, to sit back and really reflect on that deeply for themselves, which I always find is a little bit ironic in many ways. But we sit down at the beginning of any project with our business stakeholders and are really thoughtful about what are we trying to achieve? What's our hypothesis on the outcome that we're attempting to derive? And how are we going to measure that? Sometimes, like, the data is not easy to find to be able to measure effectiveness or efficiency or customer impact, in our case, member impact or provider impact. And so sitting down with our business stakeholders and building that expectation together helps us all to be aligned on what we're expecting to achieve. And then as we go through any project, we can come back to that and say, okay, are we seeing the expected outcomes? If yes, great, proceed. If not, let's spend some time really dissecting the why. Why are we not seeing the expected outcome? And that could be true if we're seeing a much higher than expected outcome or a much lower than expected outcome. Just really thinking about, are our assumptions right? If we're seeing a deviation, what is that telling us? And then certainly by the time you get to the end, reflecting back on, did this give us the value that we expected at the pace we expected? These are all good questions to interrogate the solution, not each other, but the solution. And I think that really helps you lock arms with your business sponsors and your business supporters early on so that everybody's clear. What are we trying to achieve together? And I'm always surprised at how few teams actually spend that time together to do that well. And it's something that we really prioritize here is sitting down and making sure that we're abundantly clear. And that usually helps us all align on not just what we're trying to accomplish, but also getting really clear on when does this really need it versus when do we want it? Because everyone wants everything yesterday, right? But when do we really need it to enable the business? And then pressure testing, timelines, deliveries, ROI kind of all together so that we're all super clear and in it together.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Okay, so to kind of wrap up, let's like look to the future a little bit. Obviously, you've worked across different sectors, so I'm sure you've seen the role of CDO evolve over the years, but obviously lots of change right now and expected in the foreseeable future. So if you look out, 5 to 10 years, whatever, pick whatever horizon you want. What do you think the role of a CDO in healthcare looks like down the road?
That's a hard question. I don't have my crystal ball, ready for that. But if I were going to give that my very best prediction, I would expect that the CDO continues to have to be more and more business savvy, more and more business oriented. It's not enough to understand how to build great data platforms or know how to move around data effectively or even know how to build great insights. And we really have to deeply understand how the business operates, how the business desires to operate, so that we can ensure that we're getting the data in the hands of the people that need it at the right time. I do think we're going to move away from dashboarding more and more over time, and we'll see more insights like really pushed into the flow of work so that individuals don't have to pivot out of what they're doing to go look at a dashboard and then come back, but they have the insight right where they need it. And to me, that's a super profound change for how analytics teams perform. So really it comes down to like less about the report and more about the underlying data, the curation of it, the fit for purpose nature of that data set, and really the calculation or the model that's powering that insight, making sure that it's right where people need it. That to me is definitely where the buck is headed. I think a lot of companies are already moved in that direction and have great pockets of that. But there's just so much deeper integration and like deeper understanding of the data that's needed to drive that kind of an experience universally that will keep, I think, data officers busy for a very long time. So there's that angle. And then I also think data officers are increasingly expected to be more technical, meaning you have to be able to switch between being super intimate in business and the process that the business is following to deliver the company strategy, and then also know how to build and drive the most technical solutions that the company needs to make that happen. So you're seeing this evolution in the data officer needing to be super technical and super business savvy. And that skill set together is really hard. So I do think that it requires data officers to build these two very different capabilities and mindsets to be able to unite business and data in a way that has always been needed, but not needed at the extent that it is now. And as I believe it will emerge going forward.
Yeah. Well, that I know you said you don't have a crystal ball, but that sounds like a insightful prediction, and it all makes good sense. So, well, I know we're close to time. Wendy, thank you so much for joining today. It was wonderful to hear everything going on at Centene and your vision and the great work that you're leading. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And for more interviews and insights, please visit cdomagazine.tech.